Welcome to the Chapter 12 tutorial, 1 + 1 = 3 or more. This chapter focuses on the reproductive system. The reproductive system is responsible for the act of producing offspring. Surprise! Both male and female organs are needed to accomplish this. The study of animal reproduction is known as theriogenology. This is a very important term, and it looks like it's really hard to spell, so that's a good one to remember. So, theriogenology. Learn it, learn how to spell it, and learn what it means. The reproductive organs are called genitals, and the combining form for genitals is genito. Genitals, or organs of reproduction. We're going to start with the male reproductive system. The male reproductive system includes a scrotum, testes, the epididymis, the vas deferens, and the ductus deferens, accessory sex glands, such as prostate, the urethra that runs down through to the penis, this is the extent of the knowledge that I need you to know at this point as far as anatomy goes. The scrotum or scrotal sac is the external pouch that encloses and supports the testes. The combining form for scrotum is scroto. The area between the scrotum and the rectum, or the anus in a male, is called the perineum. The combining form for perineum is perineo. Testes or testicles are the male sex organs, or sex glands, right here, that produce spermatozoa. There are 5 different combining forms for testes or testicles: orcho, orchido, orchio, testo, and testiculo. These are all used in different terminologies and different forms and ways. Every one of them is used uniquely, so knowing the root forms, combining forms, is going to help you to, when you come across a word that might have one of these, to know that, oh, that has something to do with the testicle. So, how exactly do we get sperm from point A to point B, which is out through the animal? We start here in the testicle where it is formed and made, and then it moves and matures into the epididymis. The epididymis has a combining form, also epididymo. It moves from the epididymis up and through to the vas deferens. Continuing along, it goes to the ductus deferens. It enters in through what we call the inguinal canal internally into the abdominal cavity, and travels to the prostate gland area right here. So this is the prostate. The combining form for prostate is prosto, prostato. You notice that this big structure back here is the bladder. And into the bladder comes this little tube right here, which is the ureter. That's coming down from the kidney, and it enters into what we call the trigone area of the bladder and dumps urine in here. And of course the bladder is what holds the urine. Right. The ureter then travels through, into the bladder, and the bladder then has a urethra which travels through the body. This, if you're following this black line here, this is the path of the urethra. That's exactly where the prostate gland overlies and dumps into the urethra as well. Everything that comes from the male, that's produced by the male, urine or sperm or accessory sex gland material, dumps into the urethra, and it exits out through the body through the urethra. So the urethra is a tube passing through the penis to the outside of the body that serves the reproductive and the urinary systems. And of course, just a reminder that urethra, you can remember the combining form for urethra is urethro. Alright. And looking at the combining form for penis is peni. And also priapo. As for right now, that's pretty much all we need to know about the male anatomy and trying to relate all those structures and all those combining forms that you know now to the anatomy. The area in which we call externally around the penis, which guards it, is called the prepuce. I don't believe that there is a combining form that I have you know for that, so, but just anatomically, this area is called the prepuce. Alright. Moving along to the female reproductive system. Small adjustments. Okay. The female reproductive system is responsible for the creation and support of new life. The structures of the female reproductive system are the ovaries, uterine tubes, the uterus, which has many different shapes in lots of different animals. Sometimes it has horns, sometimes it has two horns. Okay, this would be very reminiscent of what a dog and a cat would have anatomically. We have two horns, and then we have what we call a body of the uterus. And from there, the entrance out into the vagina is called the cervix. It's a very tight muscular sphincter which keeps a lock on the door to the uterus, so not just anything can pass from here into the uterus. From the cervix we move into the vagina, and also in here we can see this is urethral orifice. This is where urine enters and then exits out the vulva. And of course the urine came from the bladder, which is this white structure underneath here, and these little things that are coming down into the trigone of the bladder are the ureters from the kidney. So in the dog and the cat, when they're laying on their back, you can see that we've got the uterus and we've got a bladder following behind. Actually, that's reversed, sorry. Anyways, we've got, yes, when they're laying on their back, their uterus lies on top of their bladder. Alright, and then coming out, we find ourselves exiting near the vulva and the clitoris. Alright, there are also some external structures that we'll talk about, such as mammary glands, but we'll discuss that after we've gone through the anatomy of the female here. The ovaries are small pair of glands, small pair of organs, small pair of organs located in the caudal abdomen. Ovaries, the combining form for ovary is overo. Ovario. And the other combining form that we are going to talk about is ophoro. From the ovary, an egg is released and travels into the infundibulum and into the uterine tubes. This is actually where they are met by sperm, and fertilization occurs in the uterine tubes. The term uterine tube is the tube that carries ova from the ovary to the uterus and transports sperm. The combining form for uterine tubes is salpingo. From here, after fertilization occurs, an embryo is created, and then the embryo drops into the uterus where it bounces around and finds a home. The uterus is a thick-walled, hollow organ with muscular walls and mucous membrane lining. There are many combining forms for uterus, hystero, metro, metrio, utero, utero. All four of these mean uterus. Then we have the cervix. Coming back down through the body, we got the cervix. Cervix is the caudal continuation of the uterus and the cranial continuation of the vagina. Cervix's combining form is cervical. The vagina is the muscular tube lined with mucosa that extends from the cervix to the outside of the body. Combining forms for vagina are colopo and vaginal. The vulva is the external opening to the urinary tract that leads into the vagina. Combining forms are vulvo and epizio. Okay, give you a chance to review that. These are the terms that are all listed in your Chapter 12 terms list. Now moving along to what I talked about earlier about mammary glands. Mammary glands are milk-producing glands in females. Let's make a little small adjustment here. So mammo and masto, which are mammary glands. The estrous cycle is what prepares the uterus to accept a fertilized ovum, and most females go through different kinds of cycles. Every species has a general type of cycle in which they go through. Not all have the same phases, but characteristically there's a proestrus, estrus, metestrus, diestrus, and an anestrus. Anestrus being a quiet phase in which nothing happens. Diestrus is a phase in which the body is in preparation, and quietness too as well, or possibly in a state of getting ready to be or holding on to a pregnancy. Proestrus is in before estrus, okay? So estrus is the time when the female is most receptive to the male, and then metestrus is the time after that. Estrus actually is where ovulation occurs, and metestrus is the time in which that is post-ovulation, and we can see there's an egg that's being reborn again, and we go back into a diestrus stage. This is all stuff that you'll learn about in another day, another time. These are not specific terms that I need you to remember at this time, but I do want you to remember the combining forms for egg, which is the female gamete, right? OOO, ovia, and ovo. Those are the combining forms for egg. Alright, pregnancy. Pregnancy is the condition of having a developing fetus in the uterus and is the time period between conception and parturition. Pregno is the combining form for pregnancy, and gravido is the combining form for pregnant. Saesis also means pregnancy. This is a suffix, if you can remember. Can you think of the one term that you may have read about that contains the suffix saesis in it? And it's also in the end of this lecture. We'll come upon it. It means false pregnancy. So you can hold on to that for a minute, and we'll talk about that in the end. Gestation is the period of development of the fetus in the uterus from conception to parturition, and is a term more commonly used in animals. Gesto and gestato are the combining forms for gestation, and partuo means to give birth. So when we talk about birth, we talk about gestation is the period of development of the fetus in the uterus from conception to parturition. So gesto or gestato is gestation, and partuo is giving birth, as we talked about earlier there. And the suffix para means bearing a live fetus. Now we have all these prefixes. Nulli, which means none, primi means first, multi means many, vivi is live, and ovi means egg. Well, let's put those into words that actually mean something. So para, nulli paras, primiparus, multiparus. So none, bearing live fetus. So somebody who has never given birth to a live fetus is a nulliparous. An animal who has given birth to one, or it's their first, is primiparous, given birth to a live fetus. If they've given birth to many live fetuses, then they are considered a multiparous animal. If this animal is giving birth to live young, we call it viviparous. If they are egg layers, we call them oviparous. Alright, so here's that saesis term that I was just talking about, and pseudo-saesis. So pseudo meaning false, saesis pertaining to pregnancy, so it's a false pregnancy, pseudo-saesis. Tosha is a suffix we haven't defined yet, but it has to do with conditions of labor. So we know from chapter 1 prefix that dis means difficult or painful. So a dystocia would be a difficult or painful birth. So mastitis, think about what the root word mast, combining form, masto, having to do with mammary glands. So itis means inflammation, so inflammation of the mammary glands. This is a big deal in a lot of animals, especially in the dairy industry, who rely on lactating cows to give and produce milk. It is a big problem and can be a very big money problem for people. So this is a term also. I mean, there are dogs and cats who can get mastitis. Horses can get mastitis. It's not as common, basically because we have a lot more money and a lot more animals producing milk in the cow world. Pyometra. Alright, pyo, let's break that down. Pyo having to do with pus, if you can remember your prefixes. Metra, metro, combining form, metro was uterus, so pus in the uterus, a pyometra. Condition we'll see in dogs and cats. Not necessarily having anything to do with whether or not they've given birth. It could be after they've given birth that they have infection in their uterus. Horses can develop this condition as well. Parturition, the act of giving birth. Gestation, okay, we talked about gesto being the kind of combining form for gestation, and gestation is the period in which the animal carries development of the fetus in the uterus till it goes to conception, from conception to birth, excuse me. Ovariohysterectomy. Alright, this is one that you should definitely start breaking down, and how we do our word breaking down is, right, we start with the suffix ectomy, meaning removal. The combining vowel, so ovariohyster. Those are two root words. Vero meaning ovary, hystero meaning uterus. So the removal of the ovaries in the uterus. So basically this equals spay. Orchiectomy. Ectomy, again, meaning removal. Orchi, combining form for testicle, so removal of the testicle. Neuter. Here we have cryptorchidism. Alright, so some in this terminology, cryptorchid, alright, means when you have a testicle that is one or two testicles that are retained within the body of a male. Alright, so basically their testicles don't descend. Either one or maybe two will not descend. This animal, if it's a male, is considered a cryptorchid, or you'd say cryptorchid, that you're retaining to the animal, or if the animal is suffering from it, you would say it is cryptorchidism. Alright, we talked about that, some abbreviations. We talked about mastitis in cattle. Alright, this is a test that it's such a big deal. We actually have a stall side test that we do amongst cattle, with cows who are lactating, to test to see whether or not they have mastitis or if they might have an inflammation of some sort. And CMT is called the California Mastitis Test. You will learn more about this when you take your large animal class. Ovariohysterectomy, Alright, we like to, since this is such a long word, and we're lazy and we want to abbreviate everything in our records, you might see this term in your records every now and then. So, whoa. We got most of it on camera. Alright, OHE. Alright, and CMT. There you go. And that is chapter 12. Boom.